Well, hello, everybody. Glad to see you. Hope people start checking in. We'll wait for you a bit. It's 8 o'clock, just getting started. Hope you had a great Thursday and a great week, and we look forward to a good TGIF tomorrow, getting ready for the weekend, of course. Appreciate you taking the time. We're going to be trying something here using direct YouTube Live, which usually I use StreamYard or other apps. So part of what I am planning to try to do is to show a live video interactively here. If that doesn't work, I'll just post it on my channel and put it up there for you to view. So I'm going to be getting a few navigational things going here. If Nick, you can give me a thumbs up to let me know that everything's working fine, that would be very helpful to me. And I'm going to add you as a moderator. There we go. Nick, you're on there. Thank you, sir. All right, while we're waiting for people to join, I'm going to go ahead and look at some options on this software because it's definitely different than using StreamYard, that's for sure. Not necessarily a bad thing at all, just different. So tonight we're going to talk about Band on the Run, the McCartney smash third album that they released. And we're doing that because my buddy Brad and I did a shootout on it Saturday night. So we're going to share with you the results of that particular activity and talk about the background to it and where it stood in McCartney's catalog and things of that nature. So Band on the Run essentially is probably one of the more widely well-known records of Paul McCartney's, actually. And it came to us in the form of the LP with the cover on there. And there's an interesting story about that cover. This was his third studio album. And in December of 1993 is when this album got released. And at least in the UK, things were moving peculiarly for McCartney at that point with the loss of a couple of band members. Henry McCullough and Denny Sewell had quit the band, so they were ready to go to Nigeria and had to deal with some things there. Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Talking about real albums. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we try to talk about the real stuff. You know, it's kind of important. So they didn't have time to recruit the replacements. So they found guitarist Denny Lane. And as we all probably know, that, ended up being fortuitous for Wings. And basically they got through that trip to Nigeria and started recording. The studio in Lagos, Nigeria, was of poor quality. The conditions in the West African country were testing for those people. They were robbed at knife point at one point and lost a bag of demo tapes and song lyrics. And so they were dejected, scared, and disheartened and went back to England in September of 1973. And it was a military ruled country in Nigeria. And so upon return, McCartney received a letter from EMI warning the band not to go to Lagos due to cholera outbreak. And even though it was dated before Wings had actually left for Nigeria, and they basically kept going. They returned to England, checked with Beatles producer George Martin at Air Studios to finish the album from the rough work that had been done in Nigeria. And they had, there were a lot of technical and logistical issues that got in the way of making the record. At the same point in time, you realize, reflecting on that, it's quite a masterpiece. So sometimes the worst of conditions can bring out the best outcomes. You don't know what's going to happen because it definitely was a huge album. So the theme in the album, from McCartney's perspective, was a collection of songs, and the basic idea about the band on the run is kind of a prison escape. At the beginning of the album, the guy is stuck inside four walls and breaks out. There is a thread, but it's not a concept record. So they felt a little trapped with the situation they had, losing band members. And a lot of people think, that this is purely about the four walls being the Beatles. That's been contested a variety of ways, and it can be looked at from a variety of perspectives. But the photograph on the cover, as you see with that, it has 9 figures in it, and only 3 of them are members of Wings. So they're dressed as convicts and meant to be caught in the beam of a prison searchlight, with the circle there being enframed in the middle, surrounded by black. And above it, the album's title, of course, is written in white 1940 esque film noir evoking typeface. So there's no band name on the cover, but if you do look on the side, it's on spine on the side, it says Paul McCartney and Wings. So Clive Aerosmith took that photo October 28, 1973, at the Georgian estate in West London, Osterley Park. It depicts all the members of Wings, the 2 McCartneys and Denny Lane. But what really catches our eye are the other 6 people, right? There's a musician and entertainer, Keith Lynch, talk show host Michael Parkinson, broadcast and politician Clement Freud, the grandson, of course, of psychological person Sigmund Freud, action star James Coburn, kind of a guy you'd see in these kind of movies, boxer John Conant, and iconic actor Christopher Lee. So they were all great sports to go along with this, with the members. And they appeared in person for the shoot. And Paul, he agreed to do some other things with Michael Parkinson. So it was kind of a nice way for them to come back to England and to get reintroduced into the mix with people there, and to get this idea of an album, and not a concept album, but the theme of the album, going with a cover that was very enticing and interesting. So they very much wanted this to be an evoking cover, and a fun one at that. You see, Wings had just come off of this, or Paul McCartney had just come off of Red Rose Speedway, which was a critical disaster, actually. It did not get a lot of acclaim. When you think of that album, I guess I think of My Love as a single, but it really doesn't evoke a lot of thoughts of certain songs on it, whereas we definitely have a problem with the previous albums. For people, sometimes they don't like Wings Wildlife. Ram, I think, is a classic. I happen to like Wings Wildlife. I'm an oddity there, I guess. But the bottom line here is that this album took McCartney and really cemented this band called Wings. And this is where it was done with some really, really great material. And so with all that, we have an album that was big on both sides of the ocean, so to speak. Big in the UK, big in the US, had several hit singles from it, and was very predominant on the FM airwaves in the United States for sure. And by my recollection, this album was one that everybody was talking about. And I think it was because we hadn't talked about McCartney as much. I remember when Ram came out in 71, there was a lot of talk because of Uncle Albert as Admiral Halsey. That song was a very big hit on the radio, and it was one that, captured the imagination, I think, of people a little bit with that, Psych Sergeant Pepper's kind of sound to some of it, and really kind of brought him back, I think, to art that people could relate to, and they could see him standing alone and yet being one of the Beatles in that. Whereas Wings propelled him into, I think, a new Paul McCartney almost 3.0, to be, an individual artist with his wife and another band member that could use studio musicians and a lot of their own work and really craft records that were defining for who they were becoming. And so this album has basically that kind of a feeling to it, that kind of a riff to it. And I think most of us will agree that when you think of the song Band on the Run, or you think of the song Jet, those were really big hits at the time and made it big. So those are my initial thoughts on the album. Anybody wants to share in the Peanut Gallery their impressions of the record or your introduction to the record, those kind of things, I think that would be really helpful to have. I look forward to your engagement in that. I've just been looking a bit at some of the options I have here, and I don't see anything right off the top of my head that just says, hey, I can go share a video and show one while I'm going here. So we may have to do that as a separate video. My friend Brad and I worked on one for doing a shootout between several, up to 5 versions of Band on the Run on vinyl, which typically, we try to do as many as we have our hands on. And Brad provided actually 4 of the 5 vinyls were his. Mine was the CBS Half Speed Masters, which I've got a little sticker on there. It says $13.99 back in the day. And I looked at that in today's dollars is like $40. So just to give you a perspective of that, that's what that is. So, so any perspectives that you might have on this album or thoughts that you have on it related to your experience with it. And while we do that, I'm going to keep looking here for a way to bring in that video, but it's not just jumping out at me here in any of the settings that I see. I can't think of many better apps, Nick says. Now, I don't know if you're talking about apps or albums, but just to clarify you there, Nick. To me, this album, I don't know that it's quite in the top 10, but it's one that I find very pleasing and very interesting on the formation, essentially, of McCartney's capabilities. And I think that from my perspective, he came into his own as another band member, so to speak, at this level. So when the Beatles, were done, and then he was doing the work on his own, it wasn't quite the same. It was standalone. Whereas here, you really got the sense of a band coming together. And of course, the name of the album, Band on the Run, provides you that type of perspective into it as well. So to me, this record has a lot of pop elements that at the time were what was needed to, get into the top 40. And very much, I think that was an objective of this album because of the experience with Red Rose Speedway, having a few failed singles except for My Love. So that album was one that was a kind of a disappointment to McCartney, whereas this one kind of brought out the total makeover of what they were and how they could behave and what basically was going to go on within their within their framework. So as I see it, for me, I really think that the album represents McCartney's best foot forward out of band music, whereas he had to come out and become part of something greater than himself. And in doing so, really brought about some records that formulated a post-Beatles sound, while retaining some of that same, basic writing and basic connection that he could make in his writing. And I think that really was important for him to do, because he was kind of flailing a little bit, I guess, after Ram, it felt like. The song Band on the Run is infectious. I was hooked since the first time I heard it. It's one of the great pop songs. Yeah, Record Keeper, I agree. It's when he gets in that acoustic guitar piece that's kind of a break in the bridge. That to me is a brilliant little segue. I think it's a unique a transitional element in a song that I always really liked the sound of that, and and kind of the melody and the background vocals just were, quite infectious, as you said, I think. And there was nothing about it that was too over the top or over, or, hit you over the head. Um, very much a engaging song to kind of get the record started. And I believe, I'm a firm believer that the first track on an LP is extremely critical to draw in your audience and to bring them into the nature of what you're doing, the feeling of what you're doing, and to draw you into, listening to the rest of the album. And clearly, with Jet coming right after that, I mean, that really has some real hooky guitar riffs in it, and a little bit of orchestration, has some the horns kind of things that you heard in some of the Beatles work. So I mean, it really, Jet really also was a defining song for the maturity of what he could do and how he could do it in a new way, with a new band. And so for me, that really established kind of a cornerstone for him and the band to be taken seriously and taken beyond who he had been to who he could be and what he would become later with that. And so, you need to have that in careers, especially ones that are as prolific as a guy like Paul McCartney in his work. He did. I mean, to me, Ram is I'm not going to call it a perfect album, but it's really high up there. That album hooked me very, very quickly. And it's a fun album, like Too Many People. I mean, I think that's, it's funny. You listen to the lyrics, and about people brushing their teeth or losing weight or whatever it might be. That song is very engaging. And I think that, for me, Smile Away is another one, that's on there that just really has, those kind of funny lines in it. And I find that album just really fun. I guess that's the best word I could say for it. Whenever I listen to Ram, I have a smile on my face. And I bring Ram up, but I have to say, interestingly, they put out a few of those that were in mono, and it's not in the normal Ram cover. It's in a white blank cover. That's it. Nothing printed on it or anything. And it's a mono version. And that mono version sounds very different than the stereo version in certain places. And like the voices on Monkberry Moon Delight have a huge echo on them on the mono version. So if you ever see that or can pick it up, I don't think it's that easy to find. But if you love Ram, you would love the differences, and maybe it's available to stream even. Someone here, yeah, Michael, how are you doing, buddy? A record that's so familiar and overplayed over the years that I rarely play it now. I bought the recent half-speed mastered version out of curiosity and still have not unsealed it. Well, we're going to have some information on that one on our shootout. And I, like I said, I don't see a way that I can just start this video. I'm going to have to put it up on YouTube and put it up as an independent video. Unfortunately, my plan was to share it with you interactively, which I probably could have done with StreamYard, but I had some issues with StreamYard, so I had to go to this method for tonight. So apologies on that. But I will put up the Band on the Run shootout that I did with Brad this past Saturday, and we'll give you the findings on that. But let's just say sometimes uh, the original and country of origin matter. We'll just leave it at that for now without giving away the whole thing. But it was an interesting shootout. We added a uh, DCC CD to the shootout as an interesting add-on. So it's 5 vinyl versions and the DCC on CD as well in the comparison. So we did a US first pressing, we did a UK first pressing, we did the CBS half speed mastered, we did a 2017 reissue by Abbey Road, but not half speed, and then the half speed 50th anniversary was the last one that we put into the mix. And so it's interesting. There's pretty well a couple of ways you can go with the winners. One of them had a characteristic of brightness that was a little over the top, but if you like that, or if you have a system that doesn't deliver great highs, maybe you'll get a little more pleasure out of that one I'm speaking of when you listen to it. So there's some options. Luckily, it's not an expensive album to get. Even originals, even the UK original, you can get for around the $30. I've seen a few for sale here in the US even. So you're not going to have a very difficult time finding this record. But at the same time, as usual, it's a matter of finding one that's in good condition. And I encourage you, if you don't have the album and you want to get one, watch the shootout, because you'll want to be making sure you make the best decision cost wise, and just how many versions do I need, which is probably what Brad's asking himself right now. But again, I found that the dynamics on it were pretty good, but I will say, and I did say, and I have said for a long time, this didn't feel like the best recorded album. And, some of this comes to what we were talking about earlier when they went to Nigeria and they were working on it. They came back to England. So it's a little bit of a mishmash of material. Certainly, there's a version or two here that do it best justice. But again, I don't know that any of them do it full justice, honestly. I still feel like there's something they may have been left there, so to speak, on the tape, or the quality of that wasn't so great. Have I listened to many of the recent McCartney reissues? Yes, I have. And if they're the half speed masters, I haven't been impressed with, to be honest with you, by and large. I honestly have not been. And I can, tell you an original RAM OG, whether it's US or UK, even better, is going to beat that half speed without even getting dressed. I mean, I haven't been enamored with them. And I'm not a person that's down on half speed mastering in and of itself. I'm just, doing the comparisons. So to answer your question, I tend to not find them to be worth the investment. Hey, Travis, how you doing? North Travis County. Yeah, well, there we go. That's the Austin area. How are you? Lovell Andrew, you have the 50th. It surprisingly sounded good on here until I heard my friend's Nimbus cut that blew that one away. Oh, yeah. Well, the Nimbus cut is 4 figures. It's expensive. There only were about 1,000 of them made. And I'm sure it sounds great. I don't have it. I don't have access to it. If anybody has it and wants to loan it to me, if your buddy wants to loan it to me to shoot it out, get in touch with me and we'll make an arrangement. We'll insure it if he has to ship it or whatever. But, that's a little bit kind of, in its own little place. But I will just say there are better versions of this than the 50th that are, very reasonable. So you don't have to get a Nimbus. You heard probably the best of the best. And I want to say something about your comment too, and that is, a lot of things can sound pretty decent, on their own when you just play them, and sit down, you're satisfied, and that's fine. There's no that's cool. But these processes I go through when I'm independently doing these, and in the case of Brad, he didn't even know which album was on which turntable when I was switching, so he was totally blinded as to what it was. But this ability to compare them real time while they're almost in the same section of the song, where I can hear, 15 or 10 or 15 seconds of it and then flip it. And then I'm going to hear the same 10 or 15 seconds on the other one immediately. You start these differences aren't so subtle in a lot of cases. Now, there are some that are very close, like on my Heart review, the Canadian, the US OGs were almost dead nuts the same. I mean, they're really, and they both were mastered at Ken Dunn. So that explains a lot of it. And even the half-speed master by Nautilus wasn't that much different than those originals as well. So it isn't always the case that there are large gaps. But my point is, when you listen to something in isolation, that's one perspective. But even if you listen to it and then compare it to another, on the same turntable after you've played the song or played the side, the auditory memory and ability to really remember the nuance isn't that great. It's difficult to do. So to me, this is really the only way the way I do it is that I can objectively say, yeah, I'm pretty damn confident that what I'm hearing and, the comparison right next to it, that's right there. That's right in my face. And it represents a true difference. Now we can argue whether the degree, if I give it a point difference or a point and a half, whatever, we can argue that all day long. That's highly subjective. But I try to find differences that I would think that 99% of people would go, yeah, there's a difference there. I hear that difference. So Michael Lord has an USOG that originally was purchased new by my sister, and the 2017 repress. So I'll be interested in the shootout results. Well, very good. Yeah. Well, I think you'll be relatively happy with the results. That's all I'll say at this point. Still looking for a UK OG. Nimbus is out of my league. Me too. Thanks, Novice. Nick. So we have a situation there where, they're the 2017, we have no provenance on. We don't even know if there's digital in it. We have no idea. We don't know who mastered it. We don't know where it was pressed. It just exists. And it did very well. I'm just going to say it did very well, actually. It really punched above its weight, I would say. And being a newer press, it was quieter, of course, the vinyl, So yeah, the results are they're always interesting, I guess. But it's we started off and went in a direction, and then as we got playing more different ones, some of one of them that we thought was the best at the time slipped because it became obvious that the top end of it was becoming annoyingly exaggerated. And this is why I have that rating where I say if you're over a 10, you're over the top and you're losing points because of it. Because you're not just hitting where the sweet spot where it should be, you're excess, you're going above and beyond, and it's detracting from it. And so we did have one of the LPs that had that in the treble area. And I called that the treble trouble. There was some treble trouble. It was remastered by Wally, WLY and the Dead Wax. Now, I've noticed something interesting. Wally normally signed with his whole signature. Wally. But some records, like Band on the Run, are WLY. I wonder why. I'm hot on the hunt to try to figure that out. There's a suspicion I have as to why, and I'm not going to say what it is right now, but I'm going to tell you I have a suspicion as to why they're different. And it really came to me during this evaluation. it hit me kind of like a lightning bolt. And speaking of lightning bolts, we want to say RIP to Lou Christie. Remember Lou Christie? Lightning Strikes, big hit, 1965, number one for like 6 weeks. Lou Christie passed away today. Um, Real falsetto singer, I would say, to say the least. Kind of the Frankie Valli kind of sound to him. But since I said lightning, I think of that and mention it. So Wally is a great mastering engineer. And this is why I wonder why a few records are not signed with the full word Wally. But okay. Say blind and ability to A-B like you do is consistent with 5 decades of science on auditory perception and the way to do things. Tool, Olive may others have shown that. Yeah, I got into this discussion with the gal Susan Rogers, that's the audio engineer for Prince, and now does studies on auditory. And we talked about this and perception and bias and all that. Yeah, it's a very interesting field of thought and study in a lot of ways, actually. And personally, I think we have to try to eliminate that, wherever we can. And the other thing I can tell you is when you do these, you're playing songs over and over again and your records, over and over. And just that piece in and of itself can sometimes be, generally draining or fatiguing or whatever. A lot of cases, you get to really re-immerse yourself in the record too, which I think Band on the Run was one I did. Heart Dreamboat Annie, which I love the album, but I was more inclined mostly to play side one on that record historically, but I played a lot of side two in my shootout, and I really gained a lot of appreciation for some of the songs on side two. And so, it is an interesting process on other levels beyond the technical side too. And I heard, you hear things sometimes you never heard before or didn't realize in the record as well, because you're kind of listening more intently when you're doing a shootout, of course, Jason. Okay. Nick, you're a moderator, by the way. I don't think you were on when I told you that earlier. So, what I would say for this record is you're going to look at the review and come out, I think, with understanding where the best dollar can be spent and where, what you should avoid, I guess. For my money, also, you got to consider, on OG's wear of the record and those kind of things as well. But, as we're finding, I think pretty much, all in all, a lot of originals hold their weight pretty strongly. There was a time of period in the 70s, 74, 5, 6, 7, 8 in there, where in the US, especially, some of the vinyl was crappy because they were recycling it because of the fuel crisis at the time. And so you can get some real stinkers in terms of the pressing. I mean, I've got records I could show you where literally in the grooves, you can see a piece of another record's label, where it got pressed into it because the actual raw material they used was so polluted with other things and regrinds that weren't fully reground where they ground the label in. Today, when they do regrind, most good companies, they punch the center out where the label is, and that's scrap. And then the regrind is only the actual vinyl. But back then in the US, we really had some stinkers. So you can, in that time frame, you can look at a Japanese press, a German press, a UK press, and definitely have a much better vinyl experience. There's no doubt about that. Travis saw the Heart at HEB Center, by the way. Oh, you did? Okay, great. And still has her chops. Well, that's great to see. I noticed she was sitting some, or if not all the time, when I was watching a video of them recently. Goosebumps when she hits those high notes. She has to step up now by she has to step up now by excellent. Annie came out with a 58 flying V, brought back some memories. Yeah, Annie she can she can really she can rock. I mean, there's no doubt. I've seen a video of them recently, and they were in town recently. But well, they were in town Saturday night, and Brad and I were doing a shootout. Now that I think about it, because I remembered, I said, "Darn, that just happened to be the same day," and it's like I got somebody coming in, from out of town. But that's great that you were able to get to see them. I think that bands that can have those original people in them. I mean, as much as possible. I want to say it's a dying art. I hate to use that word in that, but I mean, it's literally, we're losing people as the days go by, like Lou Christie here died. And, we've had so many others in the past year, 2 years, you start realizing where you're really at. But yet you have some hope. Next year, you're going to have Lou Gramm getting back with Foreigner. That's amazing. I love Lou Gramm, his solo albums. I really like his solo albums a lot. You got Burton Cummings getting back together with Randy Bachman for the Guess Who. That's something I didn't think I would see in my lifetime, to be honest with you. And the Guess Who are one of my favorite bands. So there's still hope, I guess I'll say, for lack of a better thing to say. But these bands, go see them while you can. I mean, I'm blessed and cursed by the fact that I saw a lot of these bands in their heyday, and I honestly just don't want to see them when they come back, just because I have that memory of when I saw them and how good they were. And I just I don't want to have a bad feeling about it or anything like that. So I went and saw Alan Parsons here in December project, and they were amazing. Now, Alan doesn't get around real well. I don't know if he really was playing that guitar, to be honest with you, but he certainly sounded pretty good vocally. There were 4 other vocalists there, so a lot of energy and different people playing with them, and which is great because that's how they made their records. They were very much a studio band. But I'll tell you, the thing about the Alan Parsons Project show was this: the sound was studio like. It was impeccable. And it was, in fact, I think, the best sounding concert I have ever been to. And, that I've been to a lot of concerts. It says a lot. And you could tell that's his craft work, right? As an engineer, he made sure that hall sounded as good as it possibly could. Now it's a decent arena, but I've seen other bands there and not really walked away with it feeling. I mean, I saw Chicago and Earth, Wind and Fire there, and it was good. It sounded good, but there was a lot going on with all the horns and everything, of course. Whereas the Alan Parsons stuff was you could delineate all the sounds. Soundstage was wonderful. The imaging, it was really a joy, even from that. The band Chicago has so few originals left. They now goes Gary. Well, that's funny because I grew up in Gary, Indiana. That's funny. Yeah, I think even Bob Lamb's pulling back. I think the trombonist maybe is the only guy that's still, one that's always there. So I understand what you're saying there. Always been impeccable sound. Alan Parsons. Yeah. Hey, Psycho, watched you a little bit earlier. Thanks for your tribute for Lou. It was nice. Yeah, it's kind of an artist you hadn't heard of in a while, for sure. If you like some of Lou Christie's and you want a good compilation, this is on Rhino. It's called The Best of Lou Christie. It's on the old Rhino when they were doing these compilations. This one has everything you need, and it's really, really well done. Probably a $10, $15 album at the most. Maybe 15 after today. You know how that goes, right? I have to tell you. Tap the like button, please. Yeah, and I showed earlier, Psycho. I showed, of course, his big one, Lightning Strikes, Lou Christie. So, if you don't know, I always like to little tips here. When an MGM record, this is on the MGM Lion label, MGM begins with the E. It's on the bottom here, meaning it's mono. And then if it's stereo, usually it has an SE with the same number and usually says stereo. Because what they did is they would fold these foldovers in the back. They would orient them so that it would either be pulled down a little more and show stereo on the top, and you wouldn't see the E, or vice versa. It would pull it down some so the E showed, and then pulled up some and the E would show, and the stereo would wrap around the back and be covered up. You couldn't see it. So this was a mono of Lou Christie's. Just a little education on MGM covers. Not planned to talk about, but when I see those things, I always think about it. So if you just joined us, my plan for this live was to be able to interactively show the shootout, but unlike StreamYard, the YouTube Live here really doesn't seem to have a facility to do that. And so I'm going to release that video after the show separately on my channel. It won't be a members only thing. It'll just be for everybody, of course, to see. Give me a few hours just because I need to put an intro and an outro on it. But I have the whole shootout Brad and I did last night, essentially, in terms of recording, and then did the shootout last Saturday. So we also did another interesting shootout that I will be sharing shortly, of another classic rock album, comparing an original to the first release CD of it. And I'll just say it's a very popular, well-known album by one of the premier rock bands, one of the top 2 or 3 on people's lists, of course, that has a very hot mix. I'll call it a hot mix, but it's really a hot master. Really has a hot master. I'll leave you with that little tip or that little clue, and you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about. So I'll be releasing our thoughts and a review on that here in the next couple of days as well. So I've got a few things on the burner. I've got the Moody Blues. I've started to do the Days of Future Past comparison. I've got this other one I just mentioned that I'll be releasing as well. I see I got some analog production records coming. They may be at the front door right now as I speak even. And I'm trying to remember if any of those, I don't know that any of those were in my normal wheelhouse from the 75th anniversary. So may not have anything from that. But I am also going to do Toto, the first album, self-titled, because it came out number 2 on my survey of which records you all wanted to see the shootouts on. So in case I haven't mentioned it, and I don't think I have here, but I do have a members only side that I do, which if you join, your ability to get onto some of these that are going to be more live Q&As kind of things that I'm going to do with members. But more importantly, I'm doing a daily release. I call it Daily Audio Diet, 2 to 5 or 7 minute video every day that I provide for you. Also going to be doing additional shootout information on ones that I do, like spectrographs on some that I do to show you the actual dynamic ranges and things on some of these records and how they play out, and more details about some of it, even getting into some of my equipment more natively to talk about, and just some other little goodies that I'll be inserting here and there as we go. I think I'm going to make it so that you get value out of it. It's $5 plus tax, a cup of coffee a month or whatever, and it's really just there to help me keep the energy going and keep the flow of material and working on things, which sometimes we can get a little complacent about that. So that's why I'm doing it, and it's not. It really isn't a money thing. If it's a money thing, YouTube's taking 30% of it. So it's just more convenient to join. It's more convenient to just get on YouTube and see the content, not have to go to another platform and all those kind of things. So there's Wyoming Dave. How you doing, buddy? Good to see you. I think I saw you on Psycho. Well, you and him being there, that's Psycho just generally. So we don't. Anyway, just kidding. So so as it relates to all of this, it's just a matter of getting more material. And there are people, there are folks who send me some of these records to compare, like the Royal Scam. I had several from a friend in Houston. I've had a guy in California send me some. Nick sent some. Brad, obviously. I mean, so if you ever hear of a shootout I'm going to do and you're curious if we're going to be covering that one, just pop me a note, and either on Instagram or email me, David at safeandsoundtexas.com, and we can shout out a sharing opportunity, I guess, and see how that goes, because it really does help to get as many as possible in the mix, because invariably when I do one, somebody will say, what about X? What about X? What about Y? Why didn't, and it's my collection, what I have and what I can make available from friends. So, and the thing is, I don't take freebies. I don't, so I pay for everything I get. So I have to be judicious in those decisions as well. Right. Of course. Have you done any shootouts that have included some of the classic record reissues from the early 2000s? Are they generally worth the hype? I have all but two, and I have done a few. And I'm trying to think of the other one I've got in the bag. I think it's the Aqualung. Well, I think it's Aqualung, if I'm not mistaken, that I have a classic on. And I hate to say it depends, but it depends. I mean, sometimes the question is it worth the delta? That's, kind of the question. They're generally pretty strong. They're pretty toward the top, if not the winner. But there are times where there's one that's so relatively close for the dollar difference that it just really doesn't justify it, to be honest. So, it's a personal decision, but I'm not going to sit here and say anytime I've had one in there, they've won automatically. I'm not going to say that either, because that's not true. So it's a bit of a mix. They're definitely upper tier. But again, my thing is I talk about characteristics, and a characteristics on one release by a label like that and another might be different. Okay, that's just the way it is. Like I had the DCC vinyl of the Eagles' greatest hits, and I was not impressed. And a lot of DCCs sound very good, but to me, they're a little tame. They're a little soft. There's just some of them just don't have the bite that I like at the top. So, it's a smoother sound. And for certain records, for me, that doesn't work. It might work for Barry Manilow, but it doesn't work for a lot of the records that I cherish. So everybody's different. Their tastes are different. Their equipment's different. Their rooms, everybody's different. You've got to settle in. So I try to give you the characteristics of what the record has. So you could then say, well, yeah, higher treble really bugs the hell out of me. I don't think I would want that one, even if it rated higher in the end. But I really think this one has the kind of, sonics that I'm looking for, even though it wasn't the winner. So I think that, to me, I think is the importance of the approach. But to answer your question, classics definitely do rank in the top tier and sound very, very good. But it is, of course, a case by case basis. It's like, the Atlantic 45. Some of them are real home runs. I mean, they're really the one, the one you want to have. Some are just like, it's pretty good. But, do I want to flip two records instead of just have one and, have it sound 99% as good, as that one? But, it's like, no, if, it's like 90125 by S, yeah, I want that Analog Productions. I got to have that one. The S album, yeah, I got to have that one. That's the one that's, those are a lot more clear cut. No pun intended, right? But here we have July 11th, we're going to have Close to the Edge. And I am close to the edge of my seat right now, waiting for that one. I'll be just getting back from my Alaska cruise. So that'll literally be on my doorstep the day after I come back. So I'll be chomping at the bit to compare that one. That's one of my favorite Yes albums. And it's the one that I did the shootout on before. So I'll be comparing it to the winner of that. Let's see what we got going here. DCC was a half speed master label. It was an audiophile label, not a half speed master. Steve Hoffman was big with the DCC. Yeah, he is. That was his. Yep, he was. He did a personal record keeper did a personal shootout of Quadrophenia. I was really surprised how different the new half speed master sounded compared to the original and classic records, and not in a great way. Okay, well, yeah, there you go. I mean, and again, I don't want to paint with this broader brush, but I can say on a higher percentage thing, most of the half speed masters out of Abbey Road, I haven't. The Roxy Music was really good, for example. So it's you can't paint with one brush on this thing, but yeah, and there's one of these band on the runs that's like that. You listen to it and went, the line in, I'll share you the line in that I gave in the shootout about this one was, I said it turned from band on the run to listener on the run, and that was me. And I was like, oh, I got to get away from this thing. Wow, what is that? Lifeless, just really lost everything. I'm like, who was drinking the vodka that day? I don't know, but it was, yeah. I think I gave it 6s just to give you an idea. And I was being generous. I was feeling generous that time because, ugh. And that doesn't happen that often, to be honest with you. But when it does, it does. And you got to call a spade a spade. And luckily, I had Brad here with me, so it wasn't just like it was me. He like, turn that thing off. So it happens. Sometimes it happens, and it makes me wonder what happened. Right? Was it just mass production and nobody listened, or what? I mean, did they just do it and not compare anything? I don't know. I don't get those, to tell you. Yeah, it happens, Nick. Yeah, you're right. It does. And the problem is, you throw the money at it, and then stupid me, I come on here and tell you it's bad, and then I'm trying to resell it. Good luck with that. So that's what Whatnot's for. Shh, don't say that. Okay. Well, this didn't turn out like I wanted to, but I appreciate you all hanging in. I got 17. We've had up to 22 or 23. But I will put up the video for the shootout and let you just watch it at your leisure. And tell me what you think about it in the comments. I'll be curious. Some of you folks here have copies and are curious about it as well. What I'm trying to do is cover some records that I haven't seen other people cover. I'm looking, and Brad looks a lot for me too, for shootouts to see who's done this or who's done that. Nobody's done, certain ones really. And so this is one why we did Band on the Run. And Brad loves this album. It's one of his favorites. He had 4 of the 5 copies. So I said, hey, let's do it. So that's the way we'll do it. I'll be taking polls within the channel again to ask for suggestions on next ones. Membership has its privileges. Those members, I'll be really queuing up for priorities because they're invested in the channel. And the point of the membership is to try to build a small community of us to share more. I'm going to be sharing unique cuts of things that I have and give you downloads codes for them. I did one on Royce's show of the first mix take of Alan Parsons' Dark Side of the Moon, and then they made some changes to it, but I did that. I've got a quad version of Dark Side of the Moon that I'm going to make available. So there are going to be some perks above and beyond the ones I mentioned that I'm going to make available. I have a lot of promo material and unique cuts and things available in my repertoire that I'd love to share. And I think that's the easiest way for me to do it. Dad has been educating. Good stuff. Yeah, daily audio diet or dad. I'm a dad. I got 8 kids, so it made sense to me. Daily audio diet, just give you guys a snippet of information on an artist or a band or a record or a song. Yesterday was about a song specifically, and just to kind of give you something to think about besides the trials and tribulations of life, and it gives me something to bring out as well. So it's become kind of a norm and a fun thing, which I appreciate. Everybody, member or not, I appreciate everybody that watches and that gives me feedback and what have you. So David has no cable TV. I do. I have YouTube TV. I have YouTube a lot. I have YouTube Premium too, so I don't have to watch those silly commercials, and I can download videos and watch them later, which is going to be very helpful on my trip. So I'm looking forward to having that option as well. But anyway, I thank you all for joining me tonight. And again, look, in the next hour or two, you'll probably get a notice. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe and put your notifications to all so you get notified. And we will, in fact, give you that video on Band on the Run and the rankings with the numbers, traditional way. I think you'll find it interesting throwing the DCC Compact Classic CD in there is another item that I think is different. But thanks, Record Keeper. I really appreciate it. Grateful Dead trip or some other trip? No, Alaskan cruise. Alaskan cruise, the only state I haven't been to. So I'm looking forward to stepping my feet on Alaska and ringing out the 50 and say, I've been there. Yeah, that's the plan. So again, thanks everybody. I really enjoy the fact that you all come here and spend some time and share your time and your lives with me and ask questions. And I hope I can help you out in any way. Of course, my email is david@safeandsoundtexas.com, fully spelled out. Please email me anytime you need anything, have any questions. I'll be more than happy to help you out on that. And with that, I'm going to say goodnight and wish you all well for your TGIF Friday and for your weekend. And as I always say, take care, everybody. See ya.